Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Nikki, for having me. It's a privilege to be here in front of you all accomplished gentlemen. Um, I'll give a bit of a background on me. I have experience in a lot of domains. So I did my undergraduate degree in music. I studied jazz piano performance at Rutgers University. Once I graduated, I began tuning pianos to make a bit of cash on the side, and that has been a part of my life ever since. I now have a business where I have other piano technicians that I manage in New York City, and that business has been written up in the Wall Street Journal. It's an interesting apprenticeship model. I'm very passionate about education as well. Um, but after I graduated from my music degree for a few years, I decided to go back to school. I wanted to take a class in neuroscience. I wanted to volunteer in a lab. And in seeking out those opportunities, I ended up with a PhD. So um, I've got a PhD now in biology and neuroscience. I ended up studying the songs of birds and comparing them to human music statistically. So a very interesting direction that my life took. And I'm also quite entrepreneurial. So right now, it's been a few years, about 5 years since I finished my PhD, and I've been running and growing businesses ever since. The piano tuning business is one that I have, but then I started an online education business that's been growing for the past few years. I've been doing some coaching as well for the right connections. And so I'm really excited to have other people that are passionate about education. And today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to I brought a PowerPoint presentation, and I think it will be helpful to guide us, through some basic things. I recommend that you get out a piece of paper and a pen because I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Some of them are aligned with the form that I gave Nikki to send beforehand. Totally understand if you didn't fill that out. But you may want to take moments as I'm going through this presentation to take some notes on your thoughts and feelings about your state and where you're headed. And as I give that presentation, I'll give those questions. I'll explain why I asked those questions. And then I'll lead you through what I've found is kind of a template for adaptability and reaching goals. And I've seen this in my coaching. I've seen this in my own life as I enter all these different domains that I've been in, from music to neuroscience to entrepreneurship and other things. There's patterns, and there's patterns why things tend to work, especially when you're without a map, but you have an ambitious goal and you're not sure what to do next. So yeah, I think without further ado, I will pull up that presentation. I'll get started. And like I said, as I'm going through it, I recommend that you take some time to reflect. I'll try to give some moments of pause for you to take some time and reflect on the questions and situations that I'm presenting in this presentation. So yeah, let's get started. So the first question that I want you to ask yourself is a calibration question, because when we were headed to another destination, in order to get there, we need to know where we start. So I want you to take a minute and reflect. You can see these questions on the screen, or if you're on your phone, Johan, I don't know, maybe take some notes on your phone, or just reflect on these answers. What are the biggest problems you are facing right now? What obstacles are you looking to overcome? And we're talking about a variety of things in this particular situation. It could be your projects, could be your professional pursuits, could be something in life in general. Whatever you choose, an obstacle or problem that you're trying to address. So I'll move on to the next slide. Hopefully, raise your hand if you feel like, I need a little bit more time to reflect on this. And you can definitely flesh out these answers for yourself later, given the context of the presentation. So the next questions I'm going to ask are on the topic of resources. And they may not seem obvious that I'm asking about resources, but that's how I'm thinking about it. Sort of imagining us in the mountains, kind of we've had a map and we lost it, and we're trying to get someplace to civilization, to safety, or wherever our final destination is. So I've said your path is determined by the tools at your disposal. And so what I want you to ask to determine what tools you have at your disposal are, during what part of your work and life do you feel most powerful, most helpful to others, and most appreciated by others? And again, as you write, you can just hear me in the background here. I'm going to just explain a little bit, but you're welcome to focus on those questions to flesh out why I ask these questions. Typically, we each have a set of skills that are powerful, and we feel empowered using those skills and tools. And many times people get sidetracked imagining that hard work means you are doing the things that are very difficult for you. And I found that when people are successful, they actually tend to recognize what their strengths are. Those things tend to align with what makes them feel powerful, what others appreciate, and what actually gives them energy. And so if you can get out of this domain of working on things that are sort of work for work's sake, because you want to feel like you're, putting the work in, towards work that is meaningful for you and is appropriate to the tools that you have at your disposal. All right, I'll move on to the next topic. This is kind of the opposite side of the tools. I'm going to call this distress calls. And you may be familiar with the term distress and eustress. So eustress is sort of when your system gets stressed, your body, your mind, your emotional system gets stressed in a negative way that is not conducive to growth. That's distress. Eustress is kind of the opposite. And I like to align it with this term Nassim Taleb presents called anti-fragility, right? When your system is stressed in a way such that it actually makes you stronger moving forward. And we're thinking about things like exercise, lifting weights. These are the obvious examples, but there's also mental and emotional challenges that you can go through, which you should go through because they will make you stronger in the end. We want to go towards the ones that will make you stronger and avoid the ones that will make you weaker. So, in order to find out what your distress calls are, you ask yourself, during what part of your work life do you feel like you are out of your element, wasting time, or wasting energy? And as we calibrate our path, again, what we're going to try to do is go back to what was on that last slide. We're going to optimize your tools, and what makes you powerful and how you're appreciated. And then for this slide, we want to minimize, right? Or we want to bring in, that's why I say distress calls. We want to bring in others to help fill in the gaps where things aren't working. Okay. The next question I have has to do with vision. So just think, what are your goals? And I think we have some high performing people in here. So you all have goals. I know that. Some people get stuck. They don't really even have clarity on their goals, but we can all stand to clarify our goals. The more we clarify them, the more we can present them to others that will be on our team, and they will know intuitively how to support the mission. So what are your goals in the 3 months, 1 year, 3 years? And especially important question, again, I know you all are aim high already, but is there anything you see as a big dream to achieve? Maybe something that you see as almost outlandish. And I think those things are very powerful to be willing, at least, to write down, to consider as a possible destination. And again, we've found our starting point, but in order to gain a bearing and to go in the appropriate direction, we need some sort of vision of where we're headed. And that's why we need to vision these goals. And I'll just take a moment to pause. I hope this is working out for you the way that I'm presenting this. So I'm presenting the questions, talking a little bit about it. You're welcome to kind of hear me in the background and consider your answers as I'm speaking. But if you need me to slow down or speed up, just let me know. Okay, so the next question I'm calling models and templates. And I want you to ask yourself, who do you aspire to emulate? Who do you admire? Individuals, organizations, projects, for example. And I say models and templates. We're on a journey here. Journeys are defined by transformation. And the reason we need these models and templates is so that we can have a better understanding of who we need to become. Often we think in terms of what actions do we need to take, but actually sometimes we need to become who we need to become so that those actions flow naturally from who we have become. So as you think about who do you aspire to emulate, who do you admire, individuals, organization, projects, you don't have to become exactly like these people and projects, but they can serve as templates of little pieces of what you will become a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Okay. Next question. Purpose. And I want you to ask yourself, who do you serve with your projects or pursuits? Think about the ideal individual, the ideal group, a couple of ideal types. And I've put here, be specific. And I noted here, who you serve determines how you proceed. And I'm in marketing, there's this term of a client avatar. And although we can apply this to all sorts of different domains on our journeys, I find this very useful. You're serving an audience, you're serving an individual. The client avatar needs to be just laser specific. And the more that you understand who you're serving, the better you can define the actions you need to take and how you present what you're doing to them, to the rest of the outside world. So consider this question. And if you have a moment, I think, you can dive very deep into this, but think in detail about who these people that you're serving are, or who this person, if you can think of even just one ideal example of a person that you would serve. How old are they? Where do they live? What's their career? What's their education? What's their background? What keeps them up at night? What is confusing? What is frustrating? And how will their life change having come into contact with your service? And again, that's a deep question you can dive quite deep on. I'll skip on to the next one here. Again, if you need more time, just, raise your hand. It's totally fine. Next question is around awareness. So what is your current strategy? As we mentioned, the goals that you're pursuing, the directions you're headed, what are you doing now? What have you done most recently to achieve that? How are you currently addressing challenges? How much time do you spend? And how easy is it for you? And when I say how much time do you spend, so, it's going back to these things that I reference about your toolkit in your distress calls. Consider places where you may be spending more time than you need to. Things aren't working efficiently. Also think when I ask how easy is it for you, think about places where maybe you're just doing something just because it seems like the right thing to do right now, but it's actually it's not easy for you. And again, it's not easy for you in this sort of distress frame as opposed to the eustress frame. If something's difficult and you're enjoying the challenge and you feel like you're growing and changing, that's excellent. If there's anything it's just not easy for you, but also just doesn't seem like it's the challenge for you to take on, consider that. And I put awareness on there. Observe your progress and adapt intentionally, because where a lot of us fail is we fail to take moments to observe these things. That's why, you have that famous quote by Einstein, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and trying to achieve a different goal, right? That's a paraphrase. But, the reason that happens is we're not really taking some time to take some awareness around how we're actually executing what we're doing. Okay, so those are the questions that I had in that basic form that I sent out, and that I think are important for you all to consider. And I think what I might do is I was going to take a moment to check in with you all, but I think I might just continue and then we'll check in a minute. But if anybody has a story that if you have anything that you're going through here and you want to share it at some point later, we can talk through it and we can apply what I'm about to apply here. So everything that I presented so far is kind of on that calibration theme, kind of setup theme. Where am I? Where am I headed? What's going on? It's kind of like you're in your base camp and you haven't left yet, but you're kind of assessing where everything is and where you're headed. The 4 pillars that I'm going to present here are really, as you take your first steps on your journey, how are you going to make this the best journey that it can be? And this is where this sort of adaptability and pivots come into play. This is a really excellent toolkit for making changes that you can adapt, right? And you can pivot. So this is all around intention, observation, correction, and optimization. And what you're going to do as you move forward, and you're going to do this today, you can ask yourself questions again. In the past week, what were your high points? What were your low points? What kind of wins have you had this week? What kind of lessons can you learn from the past week on your journey to take forward to change? And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these questions to explain why we're asking them and how to answer them. But I'll just call out here, it's a very simple structure: highs, lows, wins, lessons, but it's very, very powerful. And it's something that you can apply on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis, any sort of regular habit that you're moving forward with. You can apply these questions on a regular basis. And by just having a habit and just answering these questions, you are nearly guaranteed to improve and get better at whatever's going on. Okay, so let's just talk about what the highs are. You can go into a little bit more detail answering that question if you want. We're going to adjust our strategy to accentuate the positive. This also aligns with that toolkit that I brought up earlier. So you're going to notice that you probably felt good in situations where you are powerful and you're suited to do these things. Notice what feeds you. What were the best parts of your week? When did you feel best? What brought you joy and made you feel alive? I'll say for myself, just to give an example, Nikki and I are in a common group. There was a breath work event. I don't know if you know that, yesterday. And that's going to go up my highs for sure. I don't know if any of you has done breath work, but wow. It was like 45 minutes of just breathing. And by the end of it, you feel like you're on some drugs or something. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I've had. Never done anything like that before. That would be one of my highs for the week. Okay, next slide, lows. Okay, and this aligns with the sort of distress calls and things like that. We want to adjust our strategy to eliminate these things as we move forward. Notice what drains you in the past week. When were you disappointed? When was your energy just low, just wasn't functional? And what went wrong or not according to your desires? You thought it was going to go this way. Didn't quite work out that way. And I'll just make a note here before I move on to the next topic of the wins. The highs and the lows, as I work with people, sometimes they're difficult to connect with. Sometimes the lows are difficult to connect with because people are, very positive minded and they really don't think about what goes wrong and things like that. But I do encourage people to at least come up with a couple of those, because those are going to improve, right? Because it's an observation. And the highs can be the other thing. People can't think of the highs, they just think of the lows. So you can have people a little bit negative. But it's important to sort of consider both of these questions, because these are going to feed your future progress, having the answers. Okay, next question is wins. And I'll explain why I have this different than highs. But first, the questions. What felt like a win? What were your accomplishments, successes, windfalls, something that just went right in the past week? And I'll explain why I separate out wins from highs. A very clear example of how they're separate. Maybe I'm Michael Phelps and I've been training for the Olympics for years and years and years and years, and I win all these gold medals, and that's a win, it's called a win. And then it's after that and I experience this sort of depression, right? And so sometimes we actually have wins, we have accomplishments, we achieved something. Maybe it's not actually as fulfilling as we thought. That's not always the case, but it's just an example of how these things are separate. So accomplishments are important to track. And I set up here, recognize achievements to gain energy and confidence. So what this is the more that you recognize that you have accomplished things, that gives you energy to move forward. Many people do the opposite. They take a look at where they're at the current moment, and they think of all of the things that they're not getting done, that they're not achieving. The more you can think about what you have achieved, that's actually what gives you the energy to move forward. And when you think about what you haven't achieved, that actually can sometimes drain your energy to move forward. It's counterintuitive, at least to the way that a lot of us operate. Okay, lessons. And this is probably the most powerful thing that many people ignore. Learning doesn't happen without some sort of intention to it. So ask yourself these questions about all your answers so far, at least for the week. If you made mistakes or fell short, what kind of lesson can you apply to avoid this in the future? What have you discovered this week through pursuing your goals that provides you with new information to improve your future? And then details on the things that I've already mentioned. If you had high moments, how can you create more highs? Right. So for me, I gave that example of I did this breathwork event and oh my gosh, wow, that was powerful for me. I felt good. I felt powerful. Maybe I need to do more, fit more of that type of thing into my life. How can you avoid more lows? Right. If you had a negative experience, can you either reframe it so that it's positive, be willing to have it be something that you're okay with because it's a necessity, or can you get rid of that thing altogether? Right? Sometimes we just endure things that drain our energy, and you might realize you don't even need to have it in your life. And then for the wins, what are the patterns that create success for you? And as you move forward, how can you create even more successes, even more quickly and efficiently? And I just got a couple more slides here, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit. I'll check in with all of you and see how things went. So after you've taken assessment of where you're at, you're on your journey, you're taking steps out of base camp. And as you take each step, you're checking in with these highs, lows, wins, lessons learned. After you take a look at the highs, lows, wins, and lesson learned, the next step is you're going to take actions based on what you observed. So you're going to choose SMART goals. Many people already understand this, but I'll just go over it really quickly. They call them SMART because they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time-based. And I have recognized that many people are aware that these type of goals are optimal type of goals, but they still don't use them. Something important to call out. So a really good example is if I say, I want to lose weight this year, and that's my goal. I didn't say, how much weight. I wasn't specific, right? I didn't say, or even worse would be get in shape. I want to get in shape this year. I'm not specific about what that means. I haven't created anything measurable, like I want to lose a certain amount of pounds or run a certain number of miles or, something like that. Is it achievable, right? Maybe if I set a goal, have I overextended what's possible? Relevant? Am I taking actions in one direction, but my intention is to go another direction? It's actually quite easy to get off topic. And then time-based, make sure you're having a deadline this year, the 1st of January, 2022 or something like that. And so what I'll do, for example, with my coaching clients is we'll go through, this provides a really great template, highs, lows, wins, lessons learned. We talk about that each week. And then we set 1 to 3 goals each week, just 1 to 3. And they're going to fulfill these criteria. And it's going to be targeted action. And you want to be self-aware and parsimonious when you choose these goals. Choose 1 to 3 goals for your week. based on everything that we said so far. No more than 5. Definitely no more than 5. And you can have a lot of things on your to-do list. That's fine. There's things to do. But I want you to think about, and I'll give some more details here about what are the criteria that make these one to three things the only things that you want to focus on for the week. Willpower. Apply willpower before time. So oftentimes we might say a goal for the week would be like spend 8 hours, I don't know, working on my project. And sometimes that can be okay. But sometimes the thing that you need to do may take less than 15 minutes. But it's the thing that you've known that you needed to do for 3 months or a year or 5 years or 20 years. And so you really need to home in on what are those things that are actually going to move the needle forward in a big way. And this is the reason we only keep it down to 1 to 3 goals. If you have a list of 5 or 10 or 20, it's easy to actually go down the list and pick something that's not very impactful to do. You want to hold yourself accountable for the things that are most impactful. So I call these high leverage goals. What will make your other things on your to-do list either easier, irrelevant, or unnecessary? And again, I think we have some high achieving folks in here. This might already resonate with you, but this can be difficult to get used to what is a high leverage goal versus just something on my to-do list. So understand it will take practice as you continue to choose high leverage goals and you do it intentionally, you'll get better at it over time. And it may be difficult to figure out what are the most high leverage things to do at first. And then I'll just offer this for people who might have difficulty. If you have a lot of things on your mind and you're trying to set your bearings, one great technique is to just list everything that you have on your mind, that tasks to be done, things that are clouding your head. And then for each item that you think you need to attend to, you want to rate each of them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. From easiest, right? Easiest would be 10. Okay. Is this an easy thing? And I'm just going to go over this. I'll give you a little bit more detail on this later. How impactful would this be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most impactful? And how urgent is this that I need to do this? 10 being the most urgent, needs to be done, today, tomorrow, the next 5 minutes, whatever. And then is a simple calculation. We just multiply those 3 numbers together for each item on your to-do list. And there'll be a composite score, and you sort the ones towards the top that have the highest score. And you forget all of the things that when you empty your head, because those often are dragging you down, and you just tackle each one from the top to the bottom of the list. That's basically the presentation we're given. I definitely want to meet you guys and interact with you, see what kind of answers that you had. These are a couple of links if you might find them useful. The bit.ly/highs-lows-etc. etc. That you can find a document which just allows you to track your highs, lows, wins, lessons learned, and state a few 1 to 3 goals. So if you forget kind of what we went over here, you could just go to that link. You can find it. You can fill it out. You can use it if you want. I use it for my coaching clients, or if you can just print it out or whatever you want to do, create a copy of it for yourself. And then the second thing I put, bit.ly/instant-clarity-machine. That's basically what I just said in the last slide. It's in a spreadsheet that's already been formatted. So where you can list out your tasks and then rate them and then sort them. It's all very easy. If you go to that page, there's a video. Make sure you scroll down and you can see how to use it. And you kind of have to click a button to sign up for an email list on that page, but I'm not really sending out emails from that list. So don't worry too much about, cluttering your inbox. That's just something that you might find useful. Okay. So that's what I wanted to walk you all through. And I'm curious, did anybody have anything that they wanted to share from going through that?
So I went through it when you shared it with me, which gives the first 7 questions on that online thing.
Right.
And I really like it because it's kind of a faster answer, and I didn't see the other part that you just shared. And that's actually amazing because it turns the whole thing away from bias into data, right? For growth hacking, we use impact, confidence, and ease. So we also take a score. Every item translates to a score. Then you know in which priority you tackle your topics. Because basically you have to think first, and then a priority is what it's the output. So you don't have to reconsider my own priorities. It's clear that you follow that one first. It's basically a similar measurement than what you've just shared. It's really nice.
Cool. Great. Niall, I saw you were writing some things down. I'm curious, of all the questions, was there one that was particularly useful for you to answer?
A lot of them resonated and touched nerves, actually, because I think a lot of these questions are questions that really I have been sort of asking myself. And what really resonated most is when you were talking about applying willpower to the actions list, the targeted actions. And I think that is something, over the last few months, I've had a lot of, my projects have gone a little bit quieter over the last few months. And what I've been really enjoying are these sort of discussions, discussions on Clubhouse, discussions with different sort of networks. And I've loved them. I mean, I'm highly curious, but what it's also making me realize that I'm doing a lot of discussion, thinking, reflection, and I'm feeling a little bit sort of guilty stroke frustrated. So I mean, it touched on where were you talking about the where do I feel it wasn't least powerful, but where am I getting frustration or distress?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it. So there's a realization that I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying all of these conversations. They're valuable as well.
Right.
But I'm realizing that what I'm not doing as much, and I have time to do it at the moment, is to convert those insights, those perspectives, those discussions into something that will, drive some of my sort of deeper ambitions forwards, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's, on a number of dimensions, actually. So it's been very helpful in that it's sort of poking a nerve or several nerves, actually, and I think and it's this link to action for me.
Right. Yeah, and I'll say this, which might be helpful for you. Oftentimes it's when we're sort of not taking action and we're kind of thinking, why not, or I should be, or something like that. Sometimes it's just a matter of understanding what it is that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so I think the best approach is just to start with something, but really know that each action is an experiment. And what the highs, lows, wins, lessons learned process is, it's kind of like analyzing an experiment.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And it takes a lot of the kind of pressure off that I have to choose the exact right next action, or if I didn't do that, thing that really high leverage thing that I should have been doing for months, I should be disappointed with myself, whatever. No, you just pick an action, whatever it is. You can make it really ambitious. You can make it really, really easy. But as long as you check back in with yourself at the end of the week, you say, how did that go? You say, you know what, that was too easy. I can do something more impactful. Or you say, you know what, that was too hard. I'm really asking too much of myself. What if I take a baby step in that direction? What if I break that down into smaller pieces, right? Whatever it is, as long as you're changing what you do in some way, and each change is observed as an experiment that you can monitor, then you're going to improve, and those actions will lead somewhere.
That's really helpful, and I think what I intellectually, it's like I do get that, and I think what you're doing is sort of really highlighting a specific, and it's this experimentation, actually.
Yes.
and taking the pressure off. I mean, you mentioned the word pressure, and I think I put sort of higher I think there's an element of being a perfectionist in what I do,
Mhm.
and that I think is a bit of a block quite often. I want it to be,
Mhm.
it's not quite right, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to sort of commit myself to that because it's not quite right yet, sort of work on it longer, and then that gets frustrations, my frustrations build up on it. So I think
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And
Yeah, one thing that I find a bit of a mind fuck, if you don't mind me,
mm,
my French a little bit, is I think that for perfectionists, one really interesting life lesson is often that to make some things perfect, you have to be willing for them to be imperfect first.
yeah, mm,
And that is so frustrating for those of us that are perfectionists,
yeah,
because you look at these things, you go, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks.
yeah,
But but there is a way to see it as a perfectionist by
mm,
saying, I did that thing that isn't perfect
mm.
because I am committed to the perfect result that is a necessary ingredient for doing.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah, and it comes back to just trying it, experimenting, and having that mindset of, well, it's an experiment. Let's try it.
Yes, I'll give an interesting example of how this sort of highs, lows, wins, lessons thing can work. Um, I was helping some people who were, just working on starting their own business. They work for somebody else, corporate. They're just trying to do something. They got to make some sales calls, reach out to people that they don't know for research or whatever. And just the type of debilitating fear about picking up the phone and talking to someone that you don't know can be so extreme depending on the person. And so, I'd be there with them to make that call, and they'd make the call and the person would answer and they would say, now's not a good time, I'm sorry. And there's, oh, okay, all right. But the run up to making that call was framed in such a way. We were so excited that they picked up the phone
Mm.
that was a win.
Yeah, yeah,
But if you're not thinking in the right frame of mind, that's a lose.
mm,
That's a failure. That's a reason to stop.
yeah,
And
yeah. You're
and
right.
then,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Actually,
No, I was
what
just
were you going to
thinking
say?
the win. Just thinking about what I'm doing, the win could be just doing whatever it is. I'm sort of I'm procrastinating on implementing or launching. The
Mm-hmm.
win is, well, okay, I've launched it, I've done
Right.
it, or I've sent that that sort of important pitch or email or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and
And then
that's
the lesson is, and then you just find out what's the lesson. And then it was not a waste. It was not, it was not a loss, whatever. So, in that particular case of a sales call, okay, so maybe I should call it a different time of day. Note, lesson learned, call at a different time of day. And then it becomes very simple to move forward. Feel good about what you're doing, have the energy to move forward, feel like you won, feel like you're making progress, even though things, you could call out ways in which they don't feel perfect.
great. Thank you. Thanks.
Sure, sure.
Helpful.
I noticed we lost a couple people. Although I think I
All
think
right.
somebody said that they had to leave at like quarter
Yeah.
after anyway. So
Marcus hopped off, but it's you presented it in a really nice way, so it's also good to walk through it when you rewatch the session online. Hey, and Johan also dropped off.
Mm.
I'm sure
yeah.
that Johan wants to be here. It seems to be a internet connection in Egypt situation.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah. That makes
It's
sense.
got behind the pyramids and the connections dropped. Yeah.
So Niall, Niall, sorry,
No,
I'm
it's not.
curious. What like did you come up with like a 3-year vision or a 3-year goal or a 1-year thing? Like
Yeah, well,
what did it happen to be?
I did quickly fill in the but it was very rapid actually because my timing was not great in terms of preparing for this. But um, the 3-year, I've not articulated it. I think, and you know, what I was reflecting on as you're going through this, yeah, there are some frustrations that I have at the very sort of tactical, short-term level, as I mentioned. But what I'm realizing is that I haven't really crystallized that longer term. But you know, I've got some ideas, I've got some plans. You know, there are things I'd like to do, but I haven't pulled them together in a vision, in a single. And I think that's essential. You know, not to have sort of different ideas or goals, or I'm not even sure they're goals, but things I'd like to do. Yeah, I guess they are goals.
Right.
But I haven't, you know, I've got a sort of overarching vision that you know, it's a little bit like, you know, what Nikki talks about, not quite the same thing, but you know, it really inspired me to think about because the work I'm doing and what I really am passionate about is helping to, as I mentioned, unlock this innovation talent. You know, every organization's got so much, and I've been working with corporates for a long time. I get very frustrated that although, you know, I'm part of transformation programs very often, not necessarily leading the whole thing, but, you know, a piece in the jigsaw. And I know that, you know, the impact I have is probably limited to a very small subset of the audiences that I deal with. And that's for a number of reasons, you know, because some people are not motivated to do anything and to sort of change or to evolve. Others, it's the organizational structure or the organizational culture or the organizational direction that, although they may say, yes, we want to become more innovative as an organization, they don't really deep down mean it because they're not taking the right action. So, you know, there are frustrations there. So, I mean, just going back, trying to sort of not go too far off track, you know, my deep passion is to say, okay, well, let's try and identify the people who are wanting to do something a bit different, whether it's a leader or whether it's one of their teams, and supporting them to help them realize that they have got a lot of capabilities, maybe identify areas where, you know, to put labels on it, and then see how they can, you know, in their area of control and influence, do something more effective to, you know, to bring their own specific innovation DNA or their innovation code, if you like, to help them, to make them feel more sort of valued within the organization, but also help to maybe advance some aspects of their business as well. So it's focusing on the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something around that, but I haven't quite, you know, pulled the different pieces together to articulate it as beautifully as Nikki does, and, you know, many others do.
There's two things I want to say, and then I want to check and see if Johan had anything you wanted to share. One is, that's really great, the direction you're going in, you know, finding the people that it's working, and kind of in a sense ignoring those that it's not working. And that goes into that question I asked about who are you going to serve. And what you want to do is you want to come up with the individual that you want to serve, not only that you can serve well, right? Like you're suited to serve them, but also, you know, what are you going to get out of it?
Yeah.
How do you want that person to treat you? For example, how appreciative do you want them to be? How effective do you want that message that you deliver to be? Because oftentimes the effectiveness of the message is dependent not just on the person who is delivering it, but the person who is receiving it.
And so, just sort of pass that over to, before you go to Johan, for me, it's very easy, actually. It's where I see someone's had an aha moment, probably very similar to, you know, to many of us. You know, if you see them, wow, okay, I now see things in a bit of a different way, and that can really add value to them. I mean, they don't need to say anything. It's just when you see that, that's where I get most passionate, when they've had an aha moment that can affect how they might behave, think, you know, move in the future.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah. So creating some sort of a even clear vision of who that ideal person is will help you find more of them and help more of them find you.
Thank you.
Then the other thing I wanted to say about the long-term vision, if we don't have a target, it makes it very difficult to head any direction.
Yeah.
But don't be too worried about choosing the wrong target. And I often give an example. For example, I'm living in Chicago right now. Let's say I want to go to California. Okay. At least I can say I want to go to California. Then I can get started on my journey.
Mm.
And then, maybe somewhere, let's say I'm on a car, or maybe I set like a bike trip or something like that, whatever. Say I end up somewhere along the way in Colorado. I say, you know what? It's kind of nice here. Maybe I'm going to stick around. Maybe this is where I was headed. That's okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to go to California. I like it here. I'm going to stay here for a while, right? So, but I would have never ended up there if I hadn't set my sights on an ultimate destination.
Mm.
And so, and you can do these, you can monitor your destination along the way as well. What's, highs, lows, wins, lessons learned. What have you learned that's exciting about your destination? What's unexciting about your destination? How is it a win if you get there versus someplace else? What have you learned about your relationship to that destination? And then go ahead and you can choose a new destination every day if you want to. But by having one in the first place, it really makes it easier to get somewhere special.
Right. No, that's great advice. Great insight. Thank you.
Sure. Johan, you may not have anything special that you wanted to contribute, but I wanted to check in with you. How you doing?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you can hear me, first of all. I hope you can.
Yeah, I can hear you just
perfect.
fine.
So I was listening to your, it was like a meditation experience for me, because I was walking, in Luxor in the city, and just listening in, all those questions. And there are two things I really appreciate as a kind of framework, because you talk about the framework. And one is, to try to track everything. So basically, in any moment of your life, you can journal how you feel in that specific activity, experience, and that provides that kind of raw data that you can after really analyze and understand, what are those activities that I don't like, what are those activities where I'm really like, super excited, big energy. So I will try to implement this, because this, like, really, I realize this is so easy, to do. It takes nothing. It's like, a few seconds of annotating what, like, with this kind of emotional layer of every activity that you're doing in your life. And that really gives you that input for the next week to plan better. Like, did I really like that activity? Maybe I can do less if I didn't, and I can do more if I did. So I really like this your approach. So thanks a lot for this.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you a really fascinating example from my own experience of tracking things like this. So I noticed I just, I was frustrated with various things that were going on, and I would somehow get to tracking, what was going on when I was frustrated. Like, what was going on with me? What was the situation? Stuff like that. And I came to this interesting realization that I wasn't drinking enough water and I wasn't eating at the appropriate times, because by tracking things and monitoring what was going on, I learned that, like, when I drank water, I felt better about this thing, right? Oh, I felt great after I, ate. I felt much better about that after I ate. Oh, that's interesting. And now all these sort of obstacles that I thought I had in my life, my system chemistry was just not set up to view them positively. And,
Right. Yeah.
then I set on a path that I was just drinking more water, and that was like magical, right? Because there were all these problems that I thought I needed to solve that were the big, gigantic problems. All I needed to do was go to the kitchen, put some water in a glass and fill it up,
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How simple things are, but often we kind of overthink, right? That's something we often do. Yeah, I really appreciated this long list of questions, going deeper and deeper, actually. And a lot, I mean, of course, I noted many of them. It's like, I will try to elaborate, and go deeper on some of those, because it's really, I really feel it can change the way you do things and the way you set goals for yourself. And that's actually very important.
And I will also change the URLs again in the follow-up email, so you can actually do this online. It's really nice because then you get a PDF with all the answers.
Right.
And I was looking at my PDF while you were going through the questions again.
Awesome. Awesome. I will say, if you're looking for a journal, one that I've used and I like, it's called the Best Self Journal. There's lots of different ones out there, but that one is one that you might appreciate. It does have kind of room to track these things on that level. Is there a different meeting that's starting?
It's 2 sessions back to back.
Okay.
I knew from Michaela that she couldn't make it to the first one. She's my sister, actually. So
Okay, cool.
I will send her I will CC her in the follow-up email to go through the questions, because I think that journal part is so supportive. It's so great to, right when you document something, you start changing your behavior. When you just think about it, nothing is changing. But when there is something to look at, that's where the change begins. Johan knows this. I put up something like this as a Google form where you just put in, like, these are my plans I want to do, and this is how far I'm away from my own targets. And you realize that you're never closer than 75% to your own plans on a daily basis, which is ridiculous. So you don't know this. You think like I'm a good achiever when you just think about it. But the moment you write it down, you have it documented somewhere, is where you realize. And that's why probably all these fitness trackers are so successful, because once you track it, you change your behavior, right? It's kind of something where you're competing against self to become the better version of yourself.
Yeah. It's also important to realize that the target often does change over time, and you don't notice that. And that's where that recognizing your accomplishments can be really helpful to give you energy. Oh, I did do this. I did do this. No, I'm not at that destination, but that's kind of because the destination keeps moving, because I'm ambitious and I want to achieve greater and greater things. But if I look back and I see what I accomplished, at least I can feel the energy to move forward towards that destination.
Eathan,
So
we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So